and welcome everyone to the Masters of Modern podcast. I am not Alex Kessler. He is not Ben Bateman. I am Renee Grano, and that is a special guest, Eli Loveman. Thank you so much for joining us, Eli. For those of you guys, Alex and Ben are not here. I think Ben is traveling right now. Alex, I think, is doing dad stuff. So I just want to thank you, everybody, for coming in. I really appreciate it. Eli, thank you so much for coming. I've been wanting Eli to be on the show for a long time with us here on the podcast, and obviously with Alex or Ben. But Eli and I have a cool story because him and I actually play at the same LGS. Eli is actually a pro player, which is super cool to play against him. I usually lose most of the time when I play against Eli, but that's okay because I tend to learn a lot of that. But I get to learn things I didn't know beforehand. But I just want to say thank you, Eli, for coming in. And why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us where everybody can find you, what you do, and just give us the 411 on Eli Loveman.
Yeah, no problem. I'm Eli Loveman. I won a Modern Pro Tour 4 or 5 years ago. I have some articles. You can find them on Channel Fireball, and my Twitter is Black Shirt Man. Although I don't really post too much anymore.
Yeah, I don't do the same anymore either. I should be, but I have a lot of things running in my head. I just don't do that though. But so today over the weekend, we're recording this the Monday leading after the Denver Regionals at DreamHack. And Eli was awesome enough to be there. And so we're going to be talking about the modern format and where it's at and what Eli thinks should change and not change. And should we have bannings? Should we not have bannings? What we're looking for in the future? Any new cards that you think might be interesting to play? But before we go through that, before we start talking about all these wonderful cards and all these awesome things that we'll be talking about on the show today, couple shout outs to our sponsors, TCG Player. There's a link at the bottom of the show notes. TCG Player has been sponsoring our show for quite some time, so thank you so much for sponsoring the Masters of Modern. And click that link. When you click that link, it'll save that on your browser. Let them know that we sent you guys, as well as Kess Toys and Games is also sponsoring the show. Don't forget the Sonic game that's coming out soon. We also got the Spy X Family, which is cool. I think the Sonic game's already out. Sorry, Alex. I don't know a lot of the stuff, but that's also out. So please check that out when you guys have a chance. I believe it's at Barnes & Noble, a bunch of cool stuff like that. And also you can find us on the internet at the Podcast. I believe we're the Podcast on TikTok, and then everywhere else is the MMcast, where you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, everywhere else. I usually, if Ben or Alex aren't using it, I'm usually the one posting clips or podcast clips or anything else that Alex posts. I will more than likely repost it over on TikTok or repost it on the MMcast TikTok or the Instagram or Twitter. So yeah, please join us there. Do a lot of fun stuff there. So Eli, so why don't we just go ahead and start talking about how your weekend went? How'd you do? We can talk about some of the... I'm going to let you just go ahead and take the reins because I know we've talked about this before. You have a lot to talk about when it comes to Modern. So
yeah, I've definitely... Yeah. I did a lot of prep for the RC because it was Modern and I'm kind of a specialist, so I thought it'd be my time to shine. I didn't really have the result I was looking for. I went kind of like a middling 9-5. I ended up playing Golgari Yawgmoth just because I had played the deck a lot before, and it was definitely very well positioned, even though there's a bad Rhinos matchup. I think if I had to do it again, I probably might have had more second thoughts about Living End. I think that was probably the best choice for the weekend. Mm-hmm. The format is definitely kind of stuck right now between Yawgmoth and different shardless, like different cascade strategies. Like Rhinos was the most played deck, and basically all of the regionals that happened this weekend, Canada, Japan, the United States, and then Yawgmoth was in second place. Rhinos is kind of the Rhinos has a good Yawgmoth matchup, and that's kind of like the big selling point. And then Yawgmoth is it's very tough to attack. It's except with like a bunch of evasive creatures, like a bunch of big evasive creatures really fast, which Living End and Rhinos can do. So the format's kind of caught between the Shardless Agent decks and the Yawgmoth decks right now.
It's interesting. I was talking to a friend of ours, and we were talking about how I was looking at the Yawgmoth combo decks, and they don't have any sort of spell removal. And I think how Gris is most of a catch-all. And I actually think that playing against Yawgmoth combo decks somewhat often when we play Modern, I noticed that I think I feel that might be one of the biggest issues in the deck, just because it does so much. It protects itself. It removes something. It's all around just a good card. It's so easy to tutor for, right? With your Court of Callings and just the fact that it's a creature outside of it being on the battlefield. How do you feel about? What do you think would be if you were to pick one card in the deck outside of being the Yawgmoth deck? What the Yawgmoth card itself? What do you think would be the biggest issue that the deck that people have the hardest issues that people have to go up against it? I actually
Yeah. So
think it's yeah.
looking at if you like look at the deck, it was all legal before Modern Horizons 2. Like you could
Mm-hmm.
play all like the Young Wolf, Court of the Calling, Yawgmoth, like all of like the like all the pieces, the key pieces of the combo were legal, but it was never like a that strong of a deck until they printed Grist, because it gave you like this way to make it. It just let you generate resources with the +1, and then it was it's like a strong answer when combined with all of the fodder. It makes the -2 like have an irrelevant cost. Like you
Mm-hmm.
see people will play like Jund decks and they'll have like a Grist in there, but like what are you gonna do? Are you really gonna sack your Tarmogoyf to like kill my Tarmogoyf? Like
Yeah.
like that's not a good
Yeah.
exchange.
Yeah,
I,
it's an interesting idea because a 3-mana kill spell isn't as strong as, let's just say, like if you were to just cite it an assassin trophy, right? So that's why I think when it comes to grit, when it comes to the Yawgmoth deck in general, like the fact that a key piece has now become Grist, and it's like you have the ability to do anything with that card. It's so good. Like, and I'm a huge Grist fan. Like I love Grist. Excuse me, I love Grist, but
yeah,
when I see that hit the ground, when I see that hit the battlefield, it's a hard pass. It's
yeah,
hard
it's
to
just
deal
like
with.
you think like, oh, they're just ones, and then like all of a sudden there's like they have three of them, and they're just like, wait, hold up, I got it. Then then they sack them and draw three cards. Like, oh wait, hold up. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Yawgmoth itself, I think, because I think Yawgmoth itself is such a versatile card, but like you said, the fact that that the deck itself was legal even before Modern Horizons 2 was there, and creating that key piece in Grizz, I think has created like this weird, not this weird, but this very powerful deck that just would you feel like if they got rid of Grist and some random Monday on bannings, oh, Grist is gone, do you think the deck is still formidable?
ugh. I think like part of the part of like the what makes like part of what decks that makes the deck powerful is that it's so hard to attack, because like if you just play like a ton of removal, you're gonna like you might win some games where they go like Delighted Halfling, Wall of Roots, Yawgmoth, but you just like kill the creatures they play. But sometimes they're gonna go like Young Wolf, like like they're gonna go like Young Wolf, Wall of Roots, Grist, and then like you're gonna fatal push all these insect tokens, and then
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I banning Grist I think would probably like relegate the deck to like definitely not tier 1 anymore. That's like such a like that's the linchpin card of the deck, like secretly.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were talking about how Crashing Footfall, the Rhinos deck is actually how the combo deck is actually a good matchup for Rhinos. Why is this such a good matchup?
Well, okay, so like you were talking about like how like Grist like can solve all your problems, but
Mm-hmm.
like the one problem that Grist doesn't solve is like an army in a going wide like that,
Mm-hmm.
and you like it doesn't deal with both rhinos at the same time. It only kills one at a time. So and then the rhino tokens have trample, so you can't really like if you see decks like Tribal Zoo or Hammer Time that like make giant creatures, you just like throw a young wolf under the bus, and then like they spent their whole turn like getting rid of half of your card, like you getting rid of half of your card. But the Rhino tokens they have trample, so they get around that. So that's why the Rhinos deck is well positioned against Yawgmoth, because your creatures don't die to Yawgmoth activations. They're too big. They're 4/4s. They don't get chump blocked. They have trample. There's two of them. They don't get die to Grist. Like you see, like Murktide Regent would be a like otherwise problematic threat for Yawgmoth because it flies and it's big, but it just gets Gristed. So that's why Rhinos is so well positioned to the Yawgmoth.
And what about the other Cascade deck? How do you feel about Living End dealing? Because I was watching the finals yesterday, or yesterday, right? I was
Yeah.
watching the Living End matchup against the combo deck, and I felt that Living has a very favorable matchup just because of the fact that just you have so many big beaters, right? And by that point, once they cast Living End, I mean, yeah, your Grist is there, but if Grist is on the battlefield, I mean, there's nothing for him to nothing for Grist to sacrifice to destroy. So, and I
So
think it's just very easy
there's
to
a lot.
reanimate.
Yeah. There's a lot of lopsided games in that matchup because living in either tends to like win in a giant 20 power alpha swing, or like they just get their spell countered or graveyard hated. With Yawgmoth, it's tricky because it's kind of like if you ever played Living End Affinity back in the day, and the Arcbound Ravager is the best card in Affinity, not because it like combos with anything, just because if when they cast Living End, you just dump all your stuff in the graveyard and then it comes back. And the Yawgmoth matchup's kind of the same way. So if the Yawgmoth player can play Yawgmoth before the Living End comes down, you just like, all right, in response to Living End, sack Wall of Root, sack Delighted Happening, sack Young Wolf, and then like I draw 3 cards, hopefully find another Yawgmoth, and then all my mana comes back into play, and then I can like maybe like combo kill you afterward.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that you can't play Yawgmoth before they play Living End if they're on the play, so it's pretty die roll-y. Whoever makes their big play first usually wins. Living End recently has also been like making a lot of little card choices here and there, so that they have a good like a better Yawgmoth matchup. Before it was kind of dicey for them because Yawgmoth has like main deck endurance and like this easy way to like if like you don't Living End like this easy way to beat a Living End if the game goes a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
Now you see them playing 4 subtlety in the main so that they can like counter endurance and Yawgmoth and then just cast Living End and win. You see people switch their like selection of the cyclers. Like a lot of decks had 4 copies of Oliphant because that when it comes into play, it's a big trampler. Once again, it's just like Rhinos where the trampler matters a lot. If you just put like Stripe Riverwinder into play, like that's no good because it'll just get blocked. So the Oliphant is also pretty big. So,
yeah, because the Oliphant gives other creatures trample as well, right?
So if you do have a strike, if you don't have 2 Stripe Riverwinders, but you have a Riverwinder and an Elephant, then it's like what 16, 11. It's like 13 trampling power.
Mm-hmm.
And no amount of Young Wolves is going to save you from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it'll be able to eat a minimum of 2 to 3, but that's all you got. I'll take 10 to the face. There's nothing else I can't really do about that. So why don't we talk about what your experiences were at the tournament? Obviously, unfortunately, right, you weren't able to get the whole way through, but I would like to know what your thoughts are on the modern metagame now that you've gone through a really big, the Denver regionals, and I believe you're going to a second one at the end of the month, right? Or this upcoming Chicago, right?
Yeah, there'll be modern tournaments there, although I'll be playing some standard as well. So
okay, so I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on the modern metagame. Maybe is there a deck that you feel can kind of really make a push right now based on what the meta's looking like? Hopefully it's Amulet Titan, but I doubt it would be. But I mean, what are your thoughts on the modern meta right now? I mean, I have some thoughts on the modern meta, but I'd love to hear what you have to say first.
Yeah, so the metagame is kind of like as we've been talking about, like it's kind of caught between the Cascade decks and Yawgmoth. It's hard to find a deck that lines up well against both. Like the cards that you want against Cascade are like Supreme Verdict to answer their board after they cascade, or like Spell Pierce to like counter the card that they're going to cascade into. Ledger Shredder as like a threat that like triggers when they play 2 spells, when they cascade. These kinds of cards just like don't really line up that well against Yawgmoth. Like the spot removal that handles Rhinos is like okay against Yawgmoth. Like Supreme Verdict, you cast Supreme Verdict and then you kill a couple mana dorks, but like the Young Wolf comes back. There's still a Gristian play pumping at 1/1s. They draw 3 cards in response to your Wrath. Like that doesn't work. Like Spell Pierce, like you can't Spell Pierce Grist because it's a creature, like we talked about earlier. Like good luck Spell Piercing a Chord of Calling. Like they have like 12 mana by the time they're
casting by that time. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then like the cards that like line up well against Yawgmoth, like it's very tricky. Like flyers, like Dragon. If you can get a Dragon Rage Channeler out, like Delirious pretty quickly, or like a Murktide Regent with Counterspell backup, like those things are good. But then like those cards, like Living End doesn't care about either of those cards. It just dies to Living End. And then Rhinos has like lots of like bounce spells like Otawara, or sometimes Brazen Bar or Dead Gone to take care of like flyers like that. So it's really hard to like find a way to attack both decks at the same time. So I think that it's not like a huge problem right now, but if things keep going like this, they might need to do something about it.
With the banning of Fury a few weeks ago, I think a lot of people were excited on the idea that, like, oh my gosh, now we're able to have more of a aggressive go wide strategy, more tribal decks, right? More humans we thought was going to come back. Domain Zoo does get some play. Like if you look at the MTG Goldfish metagame website, metagame page, it does say that you do have some really interesting decks, but obviously with the fact that you have like Orcish Bowmaster and you still have Ren and Six, even though Ren and Six doesn't see as much play as it used to, which is very interesting to me, by the way. The fact that Ren and Six is getting pushed out, it's like, how is this getting pushed out? And that's like one of the strongest top 3 planeswalkers in my opinion of all time, and it's getting pushed out. Like it's crazy to me to think that the 3, not including Oko, but the other 3 best planeswalkers ever, in my opinion, have all been pushed out in the modern meta because it's just so like mana efficient and hyper intensive. It's so interesting. Anyway, that's just a side thought on there. But do you think that banning Fury was the right idea for the modern meta? I mean, because nothing's really changed in that in retrospect, right? I mean,
yeah, it kind of was like you kind of just shuffled like so you took like you kind of took like you had like okay, so before Fury we had like beanstalk decks that were like all built around like Solitude and Fury being your interaction, and then you didn't have to actually pay the cost of discarding a card because you got the card back.
You got the card
and
back.
then Fury also gave you like it also made Rakdos Scam the best deck because it gave you like redundancy on something to combo. It gave you 8 ways to combo off with like you're not dead after all instead of just a 4. And then like without Fury around, it's kind of just like switched from like Scam being the top deck to being like maybe like 5th, and then like Rhinos and Yawgmoth like switching places, like going for like that. I do think Fury was not okay though, because like it broke like all those pitch elementals. Like the rule is that like, oh, I'm trading a card in my hand to cast it for free, and then I get like I 2-for-1 myself to answer your card for free. But Fury was the only one that broke that rule because like you discard you pitch a red card and then you Fury and then you kill like both their Doubtful Voidwalkers, and like okay, well that's not card disadvantage. Like
yeah.
it was the only one that I think that was like I think all of them were well designed except for Fury. I just like it just broke the rule. Like you didn't 2-for-1 yourself when you cast it. Like
you if anything it was an even trade. Like you said, if there's 2 Dante, the fact that you can get rid of 2 X1 creatures or X2 creatures on the board, it was very interesting to be like, oh well, those are gone, and guess what?
God forbid they have 3 things, and then you're just pulling ahead for free. Like exactly. Like
that's I get that part. I guess the idea for me was once Fear was gone, and now that Renetics has been pushed out, to me, I just said, oh, that's going to give an advantage to creature-based decks, right? But I mean, it's obviously Ragavan is still kind of thing to be played, but it's also kind of interesting to see that even without Fury, that Ragavan, the Dragon Rage Channeler, all those cards are not. I wouldn't say they're getting pushed out, but they're not as prevalent as it was earlier in the year or last year. So that's just a really interesting like stake of where the modern meta is right now. Again, I think it could be an issue, like you said. I mean, it depends on where everything goes. I mean, if you look at the top 8 from Denver, I think it was 3 Golgari decks, 3 Yawgmoth decks that were in the top 8. Then you had a Living End deck, and then you had, I think it was 2 Team Rhino decks. I was a little disappointed because Amulet Titan was just pushed out. It was in 9th place. I saw that. A little disappointed, but it is what it is. But it's interesting to me to see where the modern meta is. I feel at the same time, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've always felt this way, so I'm actually kind of glad you're on the podcast because I do have a question for you. So, as a pro player, do you feel that this sort of meta is exactly what pro players are looking for? Or would you rather see more of an open pool? Because I feel like you get that on both ends, right? Like you have casual players who talk about, well, I want to be able to brew. Because that's a conversation that Alex and I had, I want to say a couple of years ago on the podcast about how whether modern is no longer a brewer's format because now it's so hyper intensive that it's hard for you to cast a Knight of the Reliquary on turn 3, right? Because I'm a big Knight of the Reliquary fan. But it's interesting on a casual standpoint to not be able to. I would assume to brew in a way that you would think would be fun because you have the 3 best decks in the format that are just kind of annihilating everything. So I think that kind of pushes things out. But do you feel like that's the case? Do you think that it's still, are you still able to brew that way? Is this something that you enjoy as a pro player going to these tournaments and be like, okay, I'm expecting these 2-3 decks and that's it?
Yeah, it definitely is nice, like knowing, like having like the expected, like not getting surprised too many times in the tournament. Like I play against, I see my opponents playing Rhinos, and like I have like a Maelstrom Pulse and like a Legion's End and some Chalice of the Voids in my sideboard, and I like know like what I'm doing with that. Um, and like if like for pros who like don't play too much modern, like Rhinos is like the perfect deck for them. Like if you're just like a spiky drafter, you should definitely play Rhinos, because like it's all about like combat and like countering like maybe one or two of the right spells. So it's like great for those players.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like brewing goes, I think that there's still like room. There's still like a lot of room for innovation if you like look at like some like if you were like looking at modern challenges like in the weeks leading up to this tournament. There's like players like CFT Sock and Karate Dom are like playing like the Seismic Assault deck, and like if you look like Jody Keith, another professional player, made like a really deep run with like a mono white control Martyr of Sands, like all white removal deck. And like those that like yeah, you just like there's a lot of like ways to innovate right now. I think part of the reason like that those two specific like brews did well, the Seismic Assault deck and the mono white Martyr deck, is because like even though like small creatures are like pushed out, like modern is still like right now modern is just like all every deck wins with creatures. Like all the decks are creature decks.
Mm-hmm.
There's not like a ton of like like hard combo that doesn't go through creatures at some point. Like if you just look, it's like Rhino, like at the archetypes, it's like Rhinos. Okay, that wins with creatures. It wins with it's like 4/4 tokens. Yawgmoth obviously is like creatures. Amulet Titan wins with like, even though that's like a hardcore combo deck, like that's like the key piece is a creature. Like Rakdos Scam is just like, John, do you accept like Dowdy Voidwalkers, Tormagoyf? It's like creatures, like Living End creatures, Murktide creatures, Zoo creatures. I guess creativity, you could argue like it doesn't actually go with creatures, but like it's weird because like the small creatures are all pushed out of the format by Ren and Six and Bowmaster and Yawgmoth, but like these medium sized creatures are like thriving right now. It's like the entire format. It's
Yeah.
very strange.
So would you say that it's a very interesting place right now, right? Because I think there's a lot of, and I know a few of them, and I say a lot of them, but there's a handful of old school modern players who are kind of pushing away from the format because they think that the format has become something that they're not interested in. But I actually disagree at times. I think the format in my opinion, is thriving if we just give the opportunity to kind of give, like, I have a buddy who hates Ragavan, like just absolutely hates the design of Ragavan. And I said, I understand why you hate Ragavan, but you should play with it. It's a different feeling when you start to play with it, looking at it.
Yeah,
The fact that there's no upside. Oh, okay. The only downside is the fact that it's a legendary. Okay. Right. But it's by looking at the card and just reading it at first, you're like, this is busted. This is ridiculous. But the idea, once you get those cards in your hand and you start to play that way, I actually really enjoy the format. And I think some weird, some like it's been like craved into like this interesting idea. It's like, oh, it's a turn 2 format, it's a turn 3 format. It's like, you'd be surprised how many times I go to turns. Like, you'd be surprised. It's
yeah,
not what people think it is, right? It's not what people think it is at all. So um I would argue though that I do understand that, when you start to, I guess you could say, play test and practice for pro, for tournaments and stuff, I think I would think that you're practicing with, and again, this is just me looking from the outside in, but I would think that you're trying different decks like the Seismic Assault decks to see, but they've already been prevalent in the format, right? I guess my only issue would be, it's like, well, am I ever going to be able to play Slow Gherkin out of the Reliquary in a deck, or am I not going to? Like, does that just mean that the format just needs to get a little slower? Do we have to get something that pushes out these 2-mana creatures, and to give me the ability to play these things? But at the same time, as much as I would like to try, I just have so much fun playing the things that I already do, right? Like, I like you said, I think the elementals the evoke creatures are very well designed. At face value, I think they're really, really good, and I think they're really fun for the format. And you could even argue that in Commander they're really fun for the format, even though you don't really get to see them. Not too many people play them, but I think that those cards are really well designed. But it's just, I would rather play those and play an Out of the Reliquary nowadays. but I love that card. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, like it's like a lot of these Modern Horizons sets have like kind of. I think there are a lot of like there are cards that are good in like those sets. Like Solitude stops people from like auto killing you with Igmoth Nexus, or like
Mm-hmm.
Subtlety, like if they like play like I hate to say it, but Primeval Titan,
Yeah.
slows them down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it does take away from some of like the nostalgia of like, okay, well here's my Affinity deck. It's got Arcbound Ravager and Coronial Plating
Yeah.
just like it did like 10 years ago, and
Yeah.
I know all the tricks. I can sack Ravager and I get 2 counters because I have second Ravager. But like yeah, it's definitely lost a little bit of that, and that's like a trade off of like the like the play patterns are definitely a little bit more friendly than they were back in the day of just like, oh well, I'm playing Affinity against Storm and I just have like it's just a pure race. But now you're like I'm playing we're playing Rhinos against 4-color control, and even though I'm the aggro deck, I'm Rhinos. I have some counter spells I can like fight
Mm-hmm.
over. Maybe the One Ring I can like try to like bounce their Omnath and stuff like that. It's I think there's a lot more going on like than in the past.
So, what do you think would be a great way to introduce or maybe reintroduce old Modern players, or let's just say Commander player, any sort of player, to get into the Modern format? I love Modern, and obviously this is why we're doing the podcast, right? And this is why I'm part of the podcast. But I absolutely enjoy Modern. I've always loved Modern. I have a soft spot for Primetime, playing it in Standard. It's just, it has a special place in my heart. So any opportunity I have to play Primeval Titan, I'm in, right? It just happens to be a tier 1, which I'm excited for, and it's like, okay, this is cool. But when I try to explain, for example, to my Commander friends or somebody else that hasn't played Modern in so long, they're like, I don't want to play that. I don't want to play Modern anymore. Like, I can't play Snapcasters. I go, yeah, but it's fun. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
just give it a shot. Obviously, the price point can sometimes deter people away, but I mean, if a price point wasn't the issue, right? What do you think can help players get back into the game or introduce them to the Modern format?
I mean, I think there are definitely like there's some like it's like definitely for commander players there are like plenty of like decks if you like want to like make big if you're like the type of commander player who like wants to make big plays, like there's like Tron and Creativity are both like powerful decks that you can play with. Just like you want to win with your like 8 and 7 drops, like those decks are good. If you're like a mono black sack player, there's all like Golgari Yawgmoth is perfect. If you like, or even like Cabal Coffers is like a tier 2 deck. Like EDH players love Cabal Coffers, right?
Oh, who doesn't? Who does it?
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
exactly. Like
absolutely. Yeah.
I know, like the modern is definitely like even though like the top like 2 or 4 decks are kind of like work to protect each other from like being unseated. There's still like a ton of like open strategies like yeah, you like Cabal like we were just like Cabal Coffers is like
Mm-hmm.
like a perfectly reasonable deck.
Yeah.
Uh, Great, yeah, all those decks.
But I also think this is also looking in the lens of a non-competitive Modern player, right? On my side, like I'm going to go to our LGS and play there every Wednesday or Friday whenever I have an opportunity to play, and just have a good time and play with my friends. And my friend, shout out to Elliot, but he'll be playing Urza Affinity, right? How often are you ever going to, and that's fun. And
Yeah,
he's like, I'm sticking to it because I love this deck and I'm going to do what I can. And sometimes he does well, sometimes he doesn't. And then you have our other friend who loves to play like Twiddle. I don't know if you've seen him play Twiddle Storm lately,
oh
but
yeah, 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 yeah.
Esteban likes to play
Totally.
Twiddle Storm, and like a bunch of fun decks. And it's just like that's what I remember Modern being. But when it comes to like RCQs, I'm like, well, I'm going to play the deck that I know, right? So I think that's also a lot of the idea that it's like, well, if I know this deck, that's the deck I'm going to play, right? And so it's always fun to go to an LGS and actually see people try different things. Obviously, we're not going to prepare for that if we go to an RCQ or vice. If I were to go to an RCQ, it's like I'm not going to prepare for Urza Affinity or Twiddle
Yeah,
Storm.
well, yeah. There's so many decks that you should just like focus on preparing for like the top ones, and then
Yeah,
like hopefully along the way you're just like, oh, like okay, I'm preparing for Living End, but oh, I got paired against Dredge. Okay, well, so some of my cards are going to line up well,
yeah.
there's enough overlap with that sort of thing that you can always like have a fallback plan for this sort of
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely. And you talking about Tron, I would argue that Tron is the only old school Modern deck that has still kept its power. I mean, outside of the One Ring, I mean, what else has it had? What else has it gotten since Modern Horizons 2? I would think that Tron players is all like, if you notice, if you ever go when you go to like an RCQ, you see a lot of Tron players there. And I think the reason is because their decks haven't really been pushed out, right? Because I think you don't need a lot of cards in a way. I was talking to one of our friends about that a couple of days ago. I said, oh, it's interesting how Tron is still Karn Liberated and it's still, Karn the Great Creator, and you still have your Wormcoil engines and your Earth. It's really interesting how that deck has kind of still stayed intact. But I think it's also because Wizards doesn't want to print another big card for Tron because that would just be bonkers. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on Tron right now?
Yeah, I think the Tron, looking back, it's top 8 at the last 3 Modern Pro Tours, and then it always kind of like it always fades back into obscurity. It's just like, I don't know. It's just like making 7 mana on turn 3 is just going to be powerful, like no matter what's going on. Like other cards in Modern that have been like the best card in Modern have always been like contextual. Like when Tarmogoyf was the best card in Modern, and then Fatal Push got printed, it got a lot worse because it wasn't like unanswerable anymore. But they're never gonna like print. They're never gonna like print like super strong land hate because like they can't print like Sinkhole or whatever like that. Like
yeah.
So it's kind of safe. It's kind of safe because it goes off through like such a hard to interact with card type. I think that's probably why it's been strong for so long. And then like if you want to play it like these days, it's definitely like pretty solid against Rhinos because they don't like they go off on turn 3 and they make 10 power, and then you go off on turn 3 and you make Wormcoil engine, and you're winning that fight. Yawgmoth might be a little trickier just because like you don't play too much spot removals. You can like maybe like cheese them with O-Stone or something, but yeah, that one would be probably trickier.
Yeah, I really enjoy playing Tron. Just especially when you go up against Tron on the opposite side and you just see 2 Urza lands, you're like, oh, here it comes.
Do they have the third? Do they have it?
Here it comes. And then when they do, it's just, I don't know if you've ever known, but I get like the sigh of relief when there's like an Urza's Tower and an Urza's Mine. And then on their next draw, they play another Urza's Mine. I was like, oh, yes.
Yeah. Or like when they play like Forest on turn 2 so they could cast 7 scrying. Like, okay, I got an extra turn. I had a whole extra turn.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I think I'm okay. Yeah, it's really interesting. I love Tron, and I think it kind of holds a very nostalgia place for a lot of people in a way, just because I think that's the somewhat obviously like living in obviously and Yawgmoth have had previous success, but I mean from what it is now, I mean look at all the new cyclers that have been living in. It's totally different than what it was.
Like you're not even the same colors anymore. You're Teamer instead of Jund.
Exactly. So it's changed a lot, but I would think that Tron is the only one that's really kept its peace outside of just putting in One Rings, right? And I think that's always great too. Like when you have a deck that you are playing for a long time, like for example, me playing Amulet Titan, I think obviously you get new pieces here and there and you make moves, right? New pieces. But the fact that the deck has still kind of stayed intact for so long, I think is also reminiscent. But it's changed a lot compared to the Summer Bloom days, right? I mean, that's a totally different deck than what it was. So if you were to compare Tron with every other deck that has evolved over the years, I think that's the only one that's kind of kept intact, which is cool though. I think it's really great to kind of have that like old, somewhat nostalgic feel to just still being scared when seeing 3 Urza lands, right? Like that hasn't gone away.
Maybe we're exaggerating too much because now that I think about it, like Arcbound Ravager is like in a tier 2 deck, like you can like Hardened Scale has just like some good matchups against top decks, and then like me and my friends are like testing Tarmogoyf as like a card that we like are playing in our Yawgmoth deck to kind of to help with the Rhinos matchups because it's like just like bigger than a Rhino. What are they going to do about it? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
There's like there's still like these old cards that are around. Like Snapcaster Mage is a wizard for Flame of Anor. Inti got printed and it's like a way to give Tarmogoyf trample. And like they print Agatha's Soul Cauldron and it like works with all these Arcbound Ravager cards. So like people kind of people might be exaggerating too much when they say like, oh, like Modern is completely changed. Like like the powerful cards are gonna find a way into homes, just like as they print more cards, they're going to synergize with more stuff like Flame of North, Snapcaster Mage, Inti, Tarmogoyf.
I mean, I would love to see Tarmogoyf make a return. Just the fact, like you said, right? It's just more of like it's more of just the idea to say it's still good. Like it's not as it hasn't been corrupt like people think it is. It's still
if you can get him through if you can find a way to get him through the Young Wolves chump blocking him, like it's pretty good. It's a pretty good solution to the format. Like
I would think so. In reality, it's a 2-mana 5/6 most of the time. Let's be real,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like it's a 2-mana 5/7 that's just can if you
He's
can.
gonna he'll throw down with that. However many runners you throw at him.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to throw it down. That's what Goif is all about.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, are there any new cards in the last few sets that you're maybe the new Karlov set that you've been kind of interested in playtesting? Anything that you guys are interested in brewing? Something that you see kind of making a move splash in modern or no?
Ixalan had a ton of cards. Like, yeah, we just talked like I just talked about Intrigue being like a way to like go get your Tormund into into the red zone. The new set I don't think is quite as powerful as that Ixalan set was. Although the Insidious Roots card that like you could kind of go crazy with that if you find a way to like exploit it. Like we were testing some Asmo food deck and like if you have the nut draw with Oval Chase cookbook, you can like the plant tokens will just like get out of control really fast. I think that's and I know that some of the Channel Fireball guys were playing one in Yawgmoth as a way to like combo. It's like another combo piece because if you have a young wolf and a Yawgmoth, you sack the young wolf, it comes back from the graveyard, you make a plant token. You sack the plant token to reset the young wolf, and then you can go infinite that way. So Insidious Roots, I think, is probably the only card from the new set that like really stood out to me.
What are your thoughts on the Surveillance? I'm actually really excited about the fact that they're playing them. I love.
I totally missed. Yeah, like those are obviously those are obviously like the best modern cards in the set. Yeah, like you probably should be like if you think that you shouldn't be playing one, you're probably wrong. Everybody was telling me like, oh, you should try them in Yawgmoth. They'd be pretty good. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to play a tap land. But then like you just like nobody's like your draw is like basically rarely going to be perfect. Like you're probably going to have like a spot in your curve where there's an extra mana lying around, and then just turning that into like smoothing out your draw is like so powerful.
Yeah,
especially in like in Rhinos, it's perfect because they can only play some like they can't really play too many cheap cards because of the Cascade deck building, and then like Yawgmoth usually has like some extra mana lying around that you can play a tap land. Even like in Murktide, like it goes well with your graveyard stuff.
I was gonna say I think the is it Tempo deck I think is the best deck for it just because you have the DRCs and because you have that graveyard tempo there. Like it's just I think that is amazing, right? If you can't play a Ragavan on turn one, then just pass your turn and tutor for a tap land and just surveil the first card on top if need be. You know? Yeah, that's always a really cool set too. Yeah, I really enjoyed them. I think, like you said, I if they're not playing them, I don't understand why. The fact that you can surveil, which I think is so much more powerful than scrying, and the fact that you can tutor for them, it just makes it for a really good card. Like I think all around it's solid.
It's not the same as like putting like Temple in your deck because like you could like the fact that you can get it with the fetch lands means that you just like whenever you have whenever your curve isn't perfect, you just scry one. Like I don't have like 2/3/4. I have 2/2/4 on surveil on turn 3. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think those are amazing. So I do want to ask you a question. We are heading closer and closer towards the end of the episode, which I don't think we're near yet, but I do want to talk about one specific thing that Eli has a very somewhat strong opinion on. Would you say? Hot take? Yeah. Would you say it's a hot take, strong opinion?
I mean, it could be a hot take. I think other people have the hot take, and I have like the cold take. But maybe that's just because I'm, maybe this is perspective.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about your perspective. So, the hot take / perspective / cold take. We'll see what it is. We'll see what the comments say. That the One Ring is not as powerful as people think it is in Modern, or is it too slow in Modern?
Okay. Well, the One Ring like secretly has all of these deck building restrictions that like. It looks like it doesn't have on the surface. Like if you ever play a deck without like Shieldred or like Omnath to just like gain a ton of life, like it's just gonna kill you, man. Like
yeah, especially with Orcish Bowmaster on the now. Like you don't know how many times I want to react and just like I'm gonna lose like 12 life right now. This isn't what I want.
Just get domed. Yeah, like okay, yeah, like. I just think like 4 mana card advantage can never be broken. Like 4 mana, like I need a 4 mana sorcery speed card. Just like it can't be broken. Like Urza, Yawgmoth, the One Ring, like you like these cards are like you all have like you all have time to react to them. If they get countered, like it's so much tempo loss. It's like there's something else going on that's making like those cards broken. Like for Urza, it was like the Astrolabe that was like the secret was like that was the real culprit.
Mm-hmm.
For Yawgmoth, maybe it's Grist, like we talked about earlier. And then like the One Ring, I don't know if it really has like the best cards that go with the One Ring are like all also 4 mana. So then your deck ends up being like 4 One Ring, 2 Shield Dread, like maybe some other like life gain spells and control cards, and then like how can that can't be broken? Like come on.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's a reason why blue white control has been pushed out of the format a little bit because I think the fact that you stick at 4 mana is pretty hard.
Yeah, like
Uh,
if you want to play blue eye control with the One Ring, then like you either you're like double splashing for Omnath to like to protect you from your own One Rings, or you just like are trying to get there with your like Solitude attacks, which is like that's like really dicey.
yeah, you know what? I was waiting for you to say it first because I also have a hot take on the One Ring. I do not like the One Ring in Amulet Titan. There has been so many times that I've drawn that card where I wish it was just an Explorer because I'm just like a 2 mana draw card to let me play an additional land is pushing me towards my game plan than having to wait an extra turn. Now, granted, there have been times where I played One Ring on turn 2, right? But that's because I have double Amulet of Vigor. You know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah,
I'm losing.
we're already like
Yeah,
we're already doing a home run. Like
exactly. It's like I don't want to spend 4 mana to play a One Ring, so that way I can draw one more card to see if I draw the actual answer that I need. At that point, I'd rather try to net up to 6 mana, right? Because you have so the line just kind of suggests there. Now I understand the protection side of it, especially for an Amulet Titan player, like the idea that by turn 3, turn 4, you don't have an out. At least you have a turn of protection. But by then, it's just that that's all I really need. There's so many more times. I would say 98% of the time, I want to explore over a One Ring. Every time, like it's just like
yeah, that's
I this
perfect. That's
yeah.
perfect.
That is that that's gonna be my new tag on Twitter, guys. No One Ring, give me Explorers. I'll take the Explorer all day. Oh, 100%. Yeah, but I also understand the power of the One Ring. Like I think in Tron it makes a really good fit. I think in certain decks it does, but like you said, I think a 4 mana sorcery spell I think is pretty hard now. It's just the fact that, like we talked about before, and it's just so mana intensive, right? Like there's so many things in the format that I would rather do than that. Like the fact that Mana Tithe is actually a really good card right now because I saw like the Indomitable Creativity deck that top aided yesterday. Like the Mana Tithe was the MVP of the deck, right? Because you're just tapping out on turn 2, turn 3.
Everybody is so everybody's pushed towards being so mana efficient. So yeah, that makes sense
Yes.
that somebody could get away with some mana tithing
Yeah.
action.
Yeah, like Mana Tithe is not something you're going to see in Commander, right? Because if you're playing 5 mana to cast a spell, you probably still have 3 more mana left over, so Mana Tithe is irrelevant. But if you in Modern, I think it as of right now, the fact that it's so efficient with mana, it's so mana hungry, I guess, or mana store. It's very interesting. What are your thoughts on all the other decks right now, like the 4 color control, the Omnat decks, the creativity decks? I know we touched a lot about Yawgmoth and
Rhinos,
Profiles and Rhinos and stuff, yeah. But some of the other decks that are in the format right now, what are your thoughts on where the format is right now when it comes to the other, I guess, the tier 1.5, we would say?
Sure. I think that we should like the Domain Zoo kind of had like a breakout, like a little bit of a breakout weekend because of like the new combo with the 5 color Leyline with the Sign of Draco, making it like a hexproof Baneslayer.
Mm-hmm.
That deck, like just like since Modern is like so much about creatures, like if you told me like, oh, like I have a combo with my deck, like I have a combo that like makes like a hexproof 4/4 flyer with lifelink or whatever, and if you told me that in like 2017, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. Like you're probably dying to grape shot by then, right? But
Mm-hmm.
these days, like there's so much like combat that I think that Domain Zoos like kind of could be an up and comer. And then creativity. I saw that it had a really good weekend, but I don't really get it because uh like playing like a 5 mana sorcery against like those like the cascade decks when they have force of negation and like trying to like combo off using the 1/1 dwarven mine tokens like kind of like opens you up to bowmaster. So I'm not really I'm gonna be honest, like I'm not really sure what happened there. Like I really don't like creativity right now.
Mm-hmm.
Hardened scales, I think it has like it has a really good rhinos matchup because you just like make your stuff bigger than the 4/4. But and Yawgmoth can be actually okay if you like if you like Soul Cauldron if you use Soul Cauldron one of their things, then you can probably you can cheese them out.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that I like a lot of people like Artifact Hate is like so easy to come by these days with like Force of Vigor and like Besages and main decks. So I think it's like really hard to go off like through artifacts. But if you can like get away with it, like Soul Cauldron is just like really good.
Yeah, it's an interesting the Soul Cauldron has definitely up the idea that Yawgmoth now has another way, I guess in reality, like another I've heard somebody say that it's like another Yawgmoth almost, like a fifth Yawgmoth when it's
Yeah,
caught, right?
you can't kill it. You have to exile it. Otherwise,
Yeah.
like they just have redundancy for like, and it's even cheaper. They have redundancy for 2 mana, and they just keep going.
Yeah. When I saw it get the Soul Cauldron, I think I played you actually that was the first time I saw it play and I was just like, this thing's ridiculous. Why is this okay? I'm dead.
Yeah, it's so cheap too, and like
Yeah.
it has like it can be graveyard hate too. That's
Yeah.
definitely one of the cards that's making Yawgmoth tier 1. It's just like redundancy for your dead creatures plus like interaction for like the graveyard is just like so good right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what are your thoughts as we wind down here? What are some of your thoughts on where you'd like to see the format go? What you're hoping for in the future? Maybe even a little Modern Horizons 3 take?
Yeah, I think that the format's in like a pretty good place. It's like there are like some problems, but it's like definitely in a really good place, even though there's some issues. Like maybe I think if I could change one thing, I might ban Violent Outburst, but not like the rest because I don't want to. I liked how they when they banned Fury, like Rakdos Scam didn't die, it just like kind of like swished, like switched it up a little bit. Like they weren't like as in on the combo without Fury. And I think if you ban Violent Outburst, like you would still see they can just switch. They can just become. They can go from Bant. They can go from Teamer to Bant and play Ardent Plea, which is like basically the same thing as Violent Outburst, but it's a sorcery, and that would like just like make the deck like a little bit easier to fight against.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think if like the Rhinos didn't have Flash, like some of the time, format might be like perfect. Maybe even I don't know.
Yeah. Interesting. And what is there anything in the on the
Yawgmoth
ban
deck.
list?
Oh, and then like unbanning something.
Yeah.
I mean the artifact lands are probably fine because there's so much good hate right now for
Yeah.
artifacts.
I think so too. I mean, just the fact that kind of great creators in the format, and then you have Force of Vigor.
Force, Karn,
It's,
this like
yeah.
it's so hard. It's so hard to play like an all-in artifact strategy.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of cards that like wouldn't make a big splash if they were banned, but like you probably shouldn't unban them, like Dread Return or Blazing Shoal, like cards that have like never been legal.
Mm-hmm.
They probably wouldn't be powerful enough now, but why mess around with that stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I actually think Bridge from Below, because when they banned Bridge from Below in the first place, I think that was just obviously that was a move to not get rid of Hogak at the time. But I think Bridge from Below is fine. But I think with Dread Return, if you were to unban Dread Return, you can't unban Bridge from Below. So
Yeah, you probably can't. Yeah, too much.
Yeah, but if you want to unban something, I actually think that Bridge from Below would be something that you could actually unban to kind of keep up with the meta, but because Bridge from Below is once you kill one of the zombies, they're gone. And like you said, there's so much graveyard hate and so much things around. I think it'd be I mean, the fact that you can probably get. I mean, when I would play Dredge, the best turn I get would be turn 3 with the Oxyvagonist, and then I just happen to have like 2 Prize Amalgams and like 3 Narcomoebas in there. You know, like something ridiculous. But that's very few and far between. But if you were to get that, you get 5 zombies, right? So yeah, on the top end, it seems pretty annoying to get so much power in one turn. But I would say 95% of the time, you're not doing something like that. And it's just with so much removal, like you said, with Dead Gone in the format, with Fire Ice in the format, even Lightning Bolt, even Unholy Heat just kills a 2/2 zombie token, and that immediately just gets rid of all your Bridge from Belows, right? So I think that's okay, but again, I don't know. I didn't play around the Hogak Summer at the time. I wasn't playing at that time, but I didn't see the power of it. But I can see, I know why Hogak was strong, but I think you can bring back Bridge from Below if you have no Hogak personally, but I might be wrong.
Ever since Faithless looting, like graveyard strategies just like haven't really been like a big thing in Modern. Just like it's so hard to get a card from your hand into like the graveyard these days. Like there, you see people playing like the blue white Faithless looting. It's what is it?
Faithful Mending.
Yeah, you see people playing the Faithful Mending.
And the Otherworldly Gaze, right, where you surveilled 2 or
that one is much better. And that's like the closest thing you have. And even then, like there's just like, oh, I don't know, what if you just have 3 lands on top and like you can't get your Stinkweediums rolling?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of a, so I think giving, but again, I think because Dredge is so high up in the on the Storm list, I think
they're going to be very careful with that.
Yeah, but I find it interesting that we've had Storm cards be printed, but the name of the list is called the Storm list, but yet we haven't had any Dredge cards.
Yeah, well, I don't know. What the last Storm card they printed was like gain 3 life. Like no one, you can't. You literally, if you can't die to it, then it's fine, right?
Yeah, I guess so. But the fact that they still had a card that had Storm in it, I was just like, well, how come I can't get a Dredge? Give me a Dredge 4. I'm okay with that. Give me something better than Golgariath. Like, give me the card.
Yeah, they like give you like the Faithless looting with Rebound or whatever. Like,
something like that. Yeah, let's just make Dredge relevant. I guess I'd like to see Dredge become relevant, but it's kind of hard. Any final thoughts? I mean, thank you so much for being on the show. But I'd love to give you the mic for a bit, and if there's anything else you'd like to talk about, please bring it up. And again, where can people follow you, and where can people, I know you write articles for Channel Fireball.
Yeah, my articles are on Channel Fireball. Although, in going forward, if I do have more articles that I want to put out there, I might just put them out on my Twitter, which is going to be at Black Shirt Man. And I might be posting them for free now instead.
Oh, okay, cool. That's awesome. Can't wait to take a look. Well, Eli, thank you so much for coming. I know this is a little impromptu on both our ends, but I really, really appreciate it. I love talking Modern with you. Thank you so much. Again, if anybody wants to follow the podcast anywhere, you can follow us on TikTok at the Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook. We have a Facebook page at the MMcast. You can follow me at Renee the Great on every platform. Thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we can get a little more, some more episodes out. But please let us know in the comments what you guys think about the Modern format, what it's going to take you to get back into Modern, and maybe Eli and I can convince you to jump back in. I think that's our goal, Eli. That's our
let's do it.
Yeah, even though it's in February, that's our New Year's resolution. We got to get 5 people into Modern this year. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for joining. I appreciate it. Thank you again, Eli.
No problem.
This has been a production of Time Traveler Media, sending podcast.